You're asleep in your bed, all cozy under your covers with your favorite pillow under your head, when suddenly you feel a sense of danger, and you open your eyes to see a figure standing over you, holding an axe. He attacks you, maybe kills you or maybe not. But one thing's for certain, the Axeman is loose.
What you are about to hear is believed to be real, based on witness accounts, testimonies, and public record. This is terrifying and true.
One of the scariest things to think about as an adult, especially one living alone, is the idea of an unwanted visitor. Even worse yet, realizing you have such an intruder while you're already in bed, nodding off, going to sleep. This is nightmare fuel for many people, especially those, like myself, who live alone. But down in New Orleans, known as the Big Easy, things aren't so simple. And they're definitely not so easy, as in the 1900s someone began attacking people with an axe at night from inside their very beds. We'll dive deep into this story of the Axeman of New Orleans after these quick words. On a dark and damp night, on March 18, 1919, the air of New Orleans was filled with the sound of jazz. It wasn't a night for partying, though. People were scared. Very scared. They played jazz not to celebrate, but because they feared for their lives. This fear was due to a scary situation in the city. A mysterious person was going around hurting people badly. This person sneaked into houses at night and hit people in the head with a hatchet or axe. The worst part, these tools often belonged to the victims themselves or were found nearby. It was like a nightmare come to life. This person was like a monster hiding in the shadows, making everyone in New Orleans very, very scared. They would do anything, even play jazz all night if it meant keeping themselves and their loved ones safe. This is the tale of the Axeman of New Orleans, a specter of terror who, over a century ago, turned nights into nightmares and homes into scenes of horror. For a long stretch of time, starting in May 1918 and lasting until October 1919, the people of New Orleans lived in deep fear. They were haunted by a mysterious figure they called the Axeman. This horror began when a shopkeeper named Joseph Maggio and his wife Catherine were found horribly murdered in their home above their shop on May 23, 1918. While they slept, someone had cut their throats with a razor and then hit their heads with an axe. The police, trying to solve the crime, found bloody clothes that the killer had left behind. It looked like the killer had changed into clean clothes before running away. Nothing was stolen from the house, even though there were valuable things all around. A strange message written nearby in chalk said something about Mrs. Maggio. The police interrogated a ton of people, but didn't have enough proof to keep anyone. Not even 2 months later, another shopkeeper named Louis Bessemer and his lady friend Harriet Lowe were attacked just like the Maggio couple. Early on June 27, 1918, they were also found bleeding and mutilated. The police grabbed someone they thought might be guilty, but they had to let him go. The newspapers talked about the incident a lot, especially with the woman present being the man's mistress. Harriet tried to fix her face with surgery because it had been damaged, but she did not survive. Before dying, she pointed her finger at Bessemer himself. They locked him up for months, but later, a jury decided he didn't do it after having questioned him for 10 minutes. Then on August 5th, a woman named Mrs. Edward Schneider, who was almost ready to have a baby, woke up to a scary sight, a shadowy person standing over her. She got hit in the face over and over. Her husband came home from work and found her. She was covered in blood, but she managed to survive and had a healthy baby just a few days later. Again, the police made arrests, but were not able to prove anything. Just like that, only 5 days afterward, an old shopkeeper named Joseph Romano was hit in the head in his home. His nieces heard noises and saw a man leaving quickly. Mr. Romano was hurt badly, but could still walk a little when help arrived. Sadly, he succumbed to his injuries later on. The nieces said the man they saw was big and dark-skinned and wore dark clothes and a hat. Every time something terrible like this happened, the police noticed the same things. Places were messed up, but nothing was taken. The bad guy used tools he found in the homes. He broke through the doors or windows to get in, and a lot of those who got hurt or killed were Italian merchants. The city was gripped in fear. Who would be next, and why was this happening? Everyone was wondering, and nobody felt safe. The Axeman was still out there, somewhere, in the shadows. Reports flooded the police stations with sightings of a mysterious Axeman prowling the streets. Desperate to keep their family safe, people armed themselves and stood guard through the night. The city buzzed with rumors. One claimed the Axeman disguised himself as a woman, another that he leaped over fences like a shadow in the night. Amidst this growing panic, the Axeman's violent sprees seemed to pause. The relief was palpable as people slowly let go of their fear, trickling back into the semblance of normal life. Then, just as the city exhaled, the horror returned with a vengeance on March 10th, 1919. Charles Cortamiglia, a grocer from Gretna, a stone's throw from New Orleans, his wife Rosie and their little daughter Mary were the next victims. On that dreadful night, Lorlando Giordano, their neighbor and another grocer, rushed to their aid, drawn by their screams. What he found was a scene of carnage. Rosie had faced the Axeman, watching in terror as her husband fought and fell before the assailant turned on her and their daughter. Despite her pleas, the killer showed no mercy, striking them with his terrible axe. When Lorlando arrived, he discovered Charles badly hurt, Rosie wounded but standing, and tragically holding their lifeless daughter. The couple survived, barely, after being rushed to medical attention for severe head injuries. The neighborhood was reeling, the fear once again alive and tightening its grip around their hearts and minds. In a bewildering twist, Rosie accused Lorlando Giordano and his son Frank of the atrocious attack. It seemed impossible. Lorlando, aged and frail, and Frank, too large to fit through the door the Axeman had entered through. Yet, despite the improbabilities and Charles's denial of Rosie's claim, both Giordanos were arrested, tried, and found guilty in a trial that shook the community. Frank faced the gallows, and Lorlando faced life imprisonment. The story took another turn when Charles divorced Rosie, who later admitted her accusations were lies, bred from jealousy and spite. This confession led to Giordano's release, but the scars of the ordeal remained. The city of New Orleans was shrouded in fear and uncertainty after the brutal attack on the Cortamiglia family, which ended a young life, that of 2-year-old Mary. This tangible dread intensified significantly after a local newspaper, the Times-Picayune, published an alarming communication on March 16, 1919. This letter claimed to be from the perpetrator himself, the infamous Axeman. The contents of the letter, a blend of taunts and spine-tingling threats, further escalated the citywide panic. And here is the unsettling letter, exactly as it was published. Hell, March 13th, 1919. Editor of the Times-Picayune. New Orleans. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible. Even as the ether that surrounds your earth, I am not a human being, but a spirit and a fell demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come again and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with the blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way in which they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid so as to amuse not only me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they never were born than for them to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure that your police will always dodge me as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished to, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the Angel of Death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 o'clock earthly time on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to the people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose house a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much better for the people. One thing is certain, and that is some of those persons who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and as it is about time that I have left your homely earth, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or the realm of fancy. Signed, the Axeman. Despite the bone-chilling nature of this proclamation, those who have scrutinized the letter over the years, including experts in historical analysis and criminal psychology, doubt the likelihood that the true Axeman penned it. Nevertheless, the letter achieved its aim, spreading an unease so profound that jazz music resonated through the homes of New Orleans on that specific date and time as the city sought to ward off the presence of an unseen and menacing threat. In an unparalleled act of defiance, New Orleans turned to jazz for salvation. Following the Axeman's chilling promise, not a single soul was claimed on March 19th, as jazz filled every corner of the city. Dance halls overflowed, homes became concert stages, and the city united in rhythm, effectively silencing the killer's threats. For a time, peace seemed to return, but the shadow of fear never fully lifted. The quiet was shattered on August 10th, 1919, when another grocer, Steve Boca, became the latest target. Awoken to a nightmarish figure and a sharp pain, Boca narrowly escaped death. Clinging to life, he sought help from a neighbor before succumbing to unconsciousness. The details of his assailant lost in the haze of trauma. His home bore the Axeman's signature, a chiseled entryway, and no theft. The city's terror was fueled further when William Carson, a druggist, survived an attempt on his life by firing at the intruder. The aftermath left behind a battered door and an abandoned axe. Merely a day later, Sarah Lawman, a young girl living alone, wasn't so fortunate. Found unconscious and badly wounded, she survived, but the chilling sight of a bloodied axe on her lawn echoed the grim pattern. The atmosphere in New Orleans was explosive, a mix of fear and disbelief as the Axeman seemed to vanish as quickly as he had appeared. However, the silence broke again on October 27, 1919, with the brutal murder of Mike Pepitone, a grocer. His wife, a witness to the aftermath, found herself a widow, her description of the assailant as elusive as the Axeman himself, leaving behind the usual cryptic clues, but taking with him a life and leaving a family shattered. Despite relentless efforts by the authorities, the trail turned cold. Mike Pepitone's tragic death marked the last whisper of the Axeman's terror. He vanished into the night, his shadow forever lingering in the lore of New Orleans, a specter of fear and mystery that had once danced with jazz as its unlikely countermeasure. Once the jazz stopped and the city tried to find its rhythm again, an eerie legend began to take hold. The story goes, there was an old hotel in New Orleans, known simply and chillingly as the Haunted Hotel. Local tales whispered that this was where the Axeman hid, nestled in its dark rooms whilst he planned his next terrifying move. The community believed that even after his last known crime, his ghostly presence never left. Tucked away behind the hotel was a small courtyard, a place that felt different, unnervingly so. Visitors stepping into this area couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Some reported glimpsing shadows that moved without cause. Others told of inexplicable sights, pools of blood that appeared only to vanish, and mysterious voices captured on recording devices. And then there were the odd occurrences with cell phones. Signals lost, batteries draining in moments, as if the very essence of the killer lingered, meddling with the living. These stories traveled from mouth to mouth, each person adding their own touch, making the Haunted Hotel a spot of morbid fascination. Though the Axeman himself had slipped away, leaving a trail of unanswered questions, the fear he brought to New Orleans seemed to find a home in this hotel, haunting the city just as his memory continues to haunt history. Terrifying and True is narrated by Enrique Couto. It's executive produced by Rob Fields and Mark Shields. Produced by Daniel Wilder with original theme music by Ray Mattis. If you have a story you'd like us to cover on the program, send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. And if you want to support us in a very direct way, go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can support us and allow us to keep the spooky rolling and rolling and rolling. And I want to say a big thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names at the end of the show. And they are Johnny Nix, John Kalin, Bobbletopia.com, Jenny Green, Brent McCullough, Karen Wiemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time right here on Weekly Spooky and Terrifying and True.